So Al Gore sat down with the Globe and Mail newspaper and told them that he thinks Canada's oil sands are, quote, an open sewer. Seriously, he said that. Here's the exact full quote. The resource curse has multiple dimensions, and that includes damage to some extremely beautiful landscapes, not to mention the core issue of adding to the reckless spewing of pollution into the Earth's atmosphere as if it's an open sewer. An open sewer. As in the oil sands pump human waste into the air, as in what goes down your toilet? That's what Al Gore thinks. See, this is a Nobel Prize winner, so you know he's a top scientist. Now, you can debate the carbon dioxide emissions of the oil sands. I actually like to debate them. Now, I always point out that carbon dioxide is a harmless, colorless, odorless gas that people exhale when we breathe and that plants actually need for photosynthesis. I point out that natural emissions of CO2 are massively higher than man-made emissions on Earth. But I say to the carbon warriors out there, if you're truly worried about carbon, you should burn oil sands oil instead of oil from Venezuela or California, which have a higher carbon footprint. I point out that oil sands oil today takes about 29% less CO2 per barrel to produce than they did just 20 years ago because of technological improvements. See, that's a debate, that's an argument back and forth, but Al Gore isn't arguing. He's insulting. He's comparing us to a sewer. He's name-calling. But here's the thing. Canada is a net oil exporter. It's true, Eastern Canada imports most of its oil from foreign countries, including OPEC countries. I think that's an embarrassment, but that's a fact. But as a country, we're a net exporter. That is, Western Canada produces so much oil, we sell the excess of it to the U.S. That is to Al Gore's country. And the reason we do so is because Americans like to drive, and that ain't stopping anytime soon, and that's the choice that we have to face. If you're not buying ethical oil from the oil sands, that means you're buying conflict oil from other places, like from Venezuela. Venezuela, that anti-American authoritarian regime in league with Iran and Cuba. It's one of the top suppliers of U.S. oil. Right now, they sell it to the Gulf Coast of Texas. That's exactly the oil that the oil sands would displace if the Keystone XL pipeline proceeds. Oh, and it happens to take more carbon dioxide per barrel to produce Venezuelan oil than Canadian oil. Fancy that. So by calling Canada's oil sands an open sewer and staying silent about other sources of oil, Gore is implying that other countries' oil is better or cleaner and that he must prefer those other sources. Oh, like Nigeria? Here's what Nigeria looks like. Now, they're poor and they're corrupt and they don't have the rule of law and they don't have the kind of environmental laws that we have in Canada, so they're a mess. They have more than 2,000 unremediated toxic oil spills there that will never be cleaned up. Now, that's what Al Gore is silent about. But he'll call Canada an open sewer? Look, there is no way to open up the earth without it looking unpretty. That's not just oil sands mines, that's any mine. Hell, it's any farm. When you plow the field over, it looks muddy, doesn't it? I mean, nothing's dirtier than dirt. Environmentalists used to understand that dirt is supposed to be dirty, and it's naturally that way. But today's environmentalists believe that power comes from a socket in the wall, and all of our plastic things like iPhones come from a store. It's like when they buy hot dogs in the supermarket. They don't want to imagine what a cattle feed operation looks like, let alone a slaughterhouse. It's a metrosexual, ignorant environmentalism. It's not science, it's fashion. That's Al Gore. Now, the fact is, Canada's oil sands are actually cleaner than any other oil producers in the world, even cleaner than our good friends in the United States, because while our oil sands mines look ugly when they're operating, like all mines do, when they're in operation, but after they're done, we reclaim those oil sands to return them to the state they were in beforehand. That's not done in most parts of the world like the U.S. It's not even done in other Canadian provinces. And remember that oil sands mines are only even possible in just 2% of the land area of the oil sands. The other parts of the oil sands, the other 98%, is the oil is just too deep to mine. So it's produced underground without disturbing the surface, without chopping down trees or digging massive pits or using tailings ponds. 98% of the area of the oil sands will be produced without disturbing the surface. I bet you never heard of that, though, because Al Gore and Greenpeace don't want you to know the facts. Back to Al Gore. He tells us we're an open sewer. Now, that's not science or argument. It's an insult. It's almost dehumanizing, isn't it? It's comparing us, America's best friends and allies and neighbors, to human waste. It's not just any insult. It's a dehumanizing insult. And, of course, it conveniently ignores that we're producing the oil sands for America to free them from Nigeria and Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. It's because Americans burn oil that we're producing it. We've already got enough for us. Every American likes to drive and use petrochemicals like plastic, but not all of them like to use as much oil as Al Gore does personally, does he? Even in his movie, An Inconvenient Truth, Gore was so tone deaf to his own hypocrisy, he filmed himself jetting around the world first class. There are fewer seats per square foot in the first class part of the plane, so it uses more gas per person to fly, but hey, Al Gore is worth it, isn't he? We all use power at home, right? I mean, we all have computers, but not Al Gore. Here's a picture of him posing at his home office with 3 massive computer monitors. Oh, and a TV on in the background for good measure. Put aside all that plastic made from oil. Just think of the power that he's using. And that power comes from coal because he's from Tennessee. They love coal-fired power down there, which is why Al Gore doesn't call coal plants open sewers, because he knows better than to insult his fellow Tennesseans. He prefers to insult foreigners. Well, some foreigners. He would never insult the largest oil producer in the world, like Saudi Arabia, because then he wouldn't get his 6-figure speaking gigs there. Now, would he? And he wouldn't insult Qatar, right? Another OPEC dictatorship, because they just bought Al Gore's company, Current TV, from him for $500 million. That puts $70 million into Al Gore's own pockets. See, Gore is smart. He has turned environmental showboating into an extremely profitable business. Since losing the 2000 election to George Bush, Gore has amassed an estimated $200 million. That's Mitt Romney rich. Now, much of that has come from OPEC countries or from green schemes. See, Gore is smart. He doesn't bite the hand that feeds him. But Thomas Mulcair, not so smart. He loves insulting Canadians, provided they're not likely to vote for him anyways. He pits one part of Canada against another. Remember when Mulcair said this about Alberta using Nigeria as an environmental role model? Remember this?
We're allowing these companies to use the air, the soil, and the water as an unlimited free dumping ground. Their model for development is Nigeria instead of Norway.
Yeah, he really said that. So he used dumping ground. Gore said open sewer. Thomas Mulcair compared Canada and Alberta to an African kleptocracy, Nigeria, an on-again, off-again dictatorship. Now, of course, Mulcair doubled down, saying Alberta's oil industry is an economic disease, Dutch disease. At least he didn't call us a sewer, I guess. Oh, but he's happy to tax that open sewer. He's happy to use that disease to pay for his NDP spending plans, isn't he? Seriously, yesterday, Thomas Mulcair actually sided with Al Gore against Canada. He said he preferred Gore's take on our country than our own government's view. Take a look.
Well, if it's a choice between Al Gore and Joe Oliver on climate change, I think that we should be listening to Al Gore. He's studied the issue well. It's why you get those Nobel Prizes that they talk about. Look, Joe Oliver is an embarrassment to all of us.
He studied the issue well, so I guess we are an open sewer, Thomas Mulcair. He's pitting one province against the others, isn't he? He's pitting one region against the others, isn't he? He's pitting one industry's jobs against his own job, isn't he? So what should we do? What should you and I do? Well, we should realize that Al Gore is a clownish entertainer, and the most of his wealth comes from hucksterism. I mean, take this tweet just yesterday. Look at this tweet on Twitter about making money out of green schemes. Who's that? That's Gore's Canadian charity that wrote that, the Climate Reality Project. Their charitable work is teaching other politicians to mimic his PowerPoint presentation. Seriously. And that has a charitable status in Canada? I thought charities were supposed to be charities, not political training camps for foreign hucksters who get rich off global warming hype. Yeah, here's that charities page on Revenue Canada. You and I actually subsidize Al Gore's politics. I wonder if they teach that phrase, call Alberta a sewer, in their charity work. Seriously, that's all this charity does. Teaches people how to give Al Gore's presentation. Well, one guy we could ask about Al Gore's charity is Craig Ryan. Who's he? Well, he works for you. Craig Ryan is a senior bureaucrat at Canada's government-owned bank, a crown corporation called the BDC. As we told you a few weeks ago, the BDC has actually paid tens of thousands of dollars of your money to Gore's lobby group to promote his anti-oil sands message. Let me say that again. A government-owned crown corporation, the BDC Bank, has taken money that belongs to you as taxpayers and has cut a check to Al Gore's lobby group charity. But it's more than that. The BDC actually agreed to send that bureaucrat, Craig Ryan, down to the U.S. for Al Gore's political training session to train him in it. Now, if this were a privately owned bank like the Royal Bank, I'd say they're nuts and that no oil company in Canada should ever do a deal with that bank, and anyone in Fort McMurray with a bank account there should close their account, etc. But this isn't a private bank. This is your bank. This is the Canadian government's Crown Corporation Bank. And they're paying to send staff down to train with Al Gore's presentation charity? I side with Joe Oliver. He essentially called Al Gore a huckster, calmly said that he was full of it. Look at this.
If he goes beyond the facts, then I should call him on that, or else they're out there unopposed, and that's not in the national interest to let inaccurate accusations stand there uncorrected.
That's pretty calm. I'd have had tougher words for Gore if it was myself, but Oliver's right. Mulcair is wrong, and Mulcair should be made to pay a price for it politically. But what about Craig Ryan and the BDC pumping tens of thousands of Canadian dollars into Gore's anti-Canadian campaign? Why is a public servant like him sitting on the board of a Quebec anti-oil sands lobby group called Équiterre? He's their treasurer, for heaven's sake. Since when do public servants hand out cash to politicians and lobby groups and serve as treasurers on other lobby groups while working for the government of Canada? What the hell is wrong with the BDC? And if Joe Oliver is so adamant that Al Gore is full of it, is exaggerating, is lying, is insulting, well, please explain, Joe, why is your conservative government letting Al Gore's lobby group launder its donations through a charitable number, escaping the taxes that patriotic Canadians have to pay?